I've been trying to make this video for a very long time. This jumble up mess that I guess you can call serious has been going on for a year and a half, and it's been about 8 days since the year's 2-year anniversary. Needless to say, this shit's been drawn out. And I wanted to end this series with a little bit of professionalism, so let's go over the fuck up that was episode 3. Now, in the previously mentioned episode 3, I tried to explain that the people who claimed that the film was 2 step backs from feminism are incorrect, and they are blaming the entire film for the portrayal of specifically Batgirl in the prologue. So they're blaming the son for the sins of the father. And I was angry at the people who did that, and I had felt like that they were just interpreting the movie in a way that serves their quote-unquote agenda. I actually hate that word. That word makes it sound like we're talking about something that actually matters, and not a fucking Batman movie. But in the time since I released the 3rd episode, I realized that the way I went about it, it made me sound like a uneducated tit. And most of that is due to my lack of sleep and not able to find my words, and keep referring to the people with this argument as SJWs, which is a word that's been overused to the point of me actually despising it, and I never meant to actually use it. So let's go over everything that I got incorrectly, and let's not rush it out this time so I don't sound like a fucking idiot. So here's what I meant. People blame the entire movie for the portrayal of Batgirl being sexist, with the prologue having Batman and Batgirl focusing on their sexual relationship, and then Barbara is almost immediately shot and crippled. I can pretty much see where they're coming from. After the hospital scene, she's almost never seen again until the prologue. Now, I don't personally think that the original story, the Killing Joke, not this prologue bullshit, isn't sexist. If you look at Batman history, killing off members of the Bat family, even at this time, was not an odd occurrence. It had happened before, and it definitely happened after. But I can see how the story could be related to the stuffed into the fridge trope. Look it up. So what I'm trying to say is the people are just mad at the prologue, right? Well, yes and no. As you all know, in the prologue, Batman and Batgirl's relationship becomes more intimate, but the two of them obviously can't handle it. Specifically, Batgirl feels like things were getting weird, and she wasn't sure what was going to happen between the two of them, and resorts to her GBF for advice a lot of the times. Yeah, I sometimes forget he's a character in this movie too. And then the film goes so far as to say she takes out her anger on a criminal, almost kills him, and then quits. Yeah. Now, the way Batgirl reacted wasn't at all like Batgirl or any good superhero for that matter, but the same went for Batman, and that's the point I was trying to make. Batgirl wouldn't beat up a criminal to a pulp because her sex life is at a weird place. Batman was too much of a dick for him to be likable at all. The writing for the prologue was just bad all around, and it infected the main film to its core. That's what I was trying to say. To know that this adaptation of The Killing Joke, one of the best Batman stories of all time, one of the most highly regarded superhero graphic novels also of all time, is fueled by a failed relationship between two unlikable renditions of famous characters is maddening to say the least. With that shit over with, let's move on to episode 4. With that part over with, my issue with the movie as a whole now is that they were mixing 2 types of genre with the added on prologue. Like in the Killing Joke part, it was actual drama that affected lots of people and changed the status quo. Barbara was paralyzed, Gordon was almost driven insane, and depending on your stance, Batman fucking killed the Joker. And in the prologue, it's mundane CW bullshit. It's something you see in like an HBO show. Sure, Batman and Batgirl had sex, but Batman and Batgirl had sex. That's it. Ooh, Batgirl takes out her anger on innocent people. Ooh, Batman forces Batgirl to stay behind to keep her safe, and she goes out to prove him wrong, but gets herself in danger, proving him right in the process. I know it's a prologue set some time before The Killing Joke, but still, both of these stories in one film just do not mix, and let's be honest, it's nobody's fault. Well, it's actually the writer's fault because they wrote it, but what I'm trying to say is that writing a prequel story to an adaptation of somebody else's work with a big following that explains the status quo before the film starts, but also be just long enough to be feature length was never easy. But I'm sure there were a million different ways to do it better. Now my big question is, after writing 4.5 episodes, watching this film almost 3 times back to back, and after growing tired of this entire story, how is the film if you skip the prologue? It's alright. A lot of me feels like I was too hard on the movie like everybody else because of my anger towards the prologue. And if you look at a lot of the reviews, the issues are the prologue. So, you skip the prologue, it will save your time, eyesight, anger, sadness, and depression. Not all of it, but most of it. Now, sure, the prologue is 1/3 of the runtime, and it's inexcusable some of the shit that they wrote into that, and yes, it does deserve almost all of the hate that it gets. I agree with all of you. Now on to the actual Killing Joke part. Like I said in the last video, there's not enough to make it into a feature-length film. It's literally almost word for word, and so there's nothing new. And the animation quality isn't that great. It doesn't transition very well. The colors aren't vibrant enough like the original release of The Killing Joke, like Godzilla Mendoza said. However, it's still The Killing Joke. Sure, there's nothing new, and while that is a bad thing to some, it's alright with me. It's still a great adaptation if you ignore the prologue. So, if you read the comic and you want to watch the Killing Joke movie, just go ahead. I'm sorry if this was anticlimactic. I'm sorry if you were expecting this big, bombastic ending to the series, since I'm actually fulfilling most of my promises I made in the past. But this is just my honest opinion. I am done with this film. I will possibly never watch it again. And it's time to move on to newer, better things, since I'm done with the whole review thing. I like to talk about stuff. I think I'm moving away from the whole actual in-depth review analysis aspect. So yeah, thank you for watching this series for 1.5 years. Sure, the views were dwindling, but the people who stayed, or the people who watched any of it, I thank you. You guys are the best. You're the reason I want to keep making content. I thank you so much, and I love you all, and I'll see you next time when I shitpost.